Darnell canceled his wife's resort reservation to upgrade his mistress to the honeymoon villa. His family cheered as hotel security removed her belongings. She stood there, silent and humiliated. Then the resort owner walked out, fell to his knees, and said 5 words that destroyed everything. "Forgive me, Madam Chairman." The Paradise Cove Resort in the Maldives was the kind of place where dreams came true for the wealthy and powerful. Crystal blue waters stretched out as far as the eye could see. White sand beaches sparkled under the tropical sun, and luxury villas sat perched over the ocean like floating palaces. It was the kind of place that cost $30,000 a night, where celebrities and billionaires came to escape the world. But on this particular day, Paradise Cove was about to become the setting for the most devastating public humiliation one woman had ever experienced, and the most shocking revelation the resort had ever witnessed. Celeste arrived at the grand lobby entrance with her modest luggage, her heart heavy but still holding on to a thin thread of hope. She wore a simple sundress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and Mama Ruth's silver locket hung around her neck like it always did. She'd been married to Darnell for 7 years, and despite everything that had been falling apart between them over the past 6 months, she'd held on to the belief that maybe this trip could heal something. Maybe they could remember why they fell in love. Maybe he would see her again, really see her, the way he used to when they first met at that community center all those years ago. But the moment she stepped into that lobby, she knew something was terribly wrong. The air felt cold despite the tropical heat outside. The front desk clerk looked at her with a strange mixture of pity and disdain. And then she heard the laughter, that cruel, sharp laughter that she'd come to know too well. It was coming from the lounge area where Darnell sat with his arm draped around Bianca, the woman who had slowly stolen her husband's heart over the past year. Bianca was everything Celeste wasn't. Loud, flashy, confident in a way that demanded attention. She wore a tight red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair flowing in perfect waves, her laugh piercing the air like a knife. But it wasn't just Darnell and Bianca. Darnell's mother Lorraine sat there too, dressed in expensive jewelry and designer clothes, her face twisted in that familiar expression of disapproval she always wore whenever she looked at Celeste. And beside her was Tamika, Darnell's younger sister, her phone already out, recording everything, a wicked smile playing on her lips. Celeste's stomach dropped. This wasn't a coincidence. This was planned. This was an ambush. She approached the front desk, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hi, I have a reservation under Celeste Hayes." The clerk barely looked at her, typing slowly on the computer with an air of boredom. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That reservation has been canceled." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Celeste felt her breath catch in her throat. "Canceled? There must be some mistake. My husband made the reservation. We're supposed to be staying in the honeymoon villa." That's when she heard Lorraine's voice, cut through the lobby like a blade. "Oh, honey, didn't Darnell tell you? He upgraded that reservation for someone who actually deserves it." The laughter that followed was like acid on Celeste's skin. She turned to see all 4 of them staring at her, Darnell's face cold and emotionless, Bianca smirking with satisfaction, Lorraine shaking her head with mock sympathy, and Tamika still recording, capturing every moment of Celeste's humiliation for whatever cruel purpose she had in mind. Darnell finally stood up, walking over to Celeste with Bianca still attached to his arm like an expensive accessory. "Celeste, what are you doing here? I thought I made it clear. This trip is for me and Bianca. It's our time. You need to accept that and move on." His voice was casual, almost bored, like he was talking about changing dinner plans, not destroying his wife's heart in front of a room full of strangers. Celeste felt something crack inside her chest, but she kept her face calm. She'd learned long ago how to hide her pain. Mama Ruth had taught her that dignity meant standing tall even when the world tried to break you. "Darnell, we're married," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "This was supposed to be our trip, our chance to fix things." Bianca laughed, actually laughed right in Celeste's face. "Girl, please, fix what? He doesn't want you. He never really did. He just felt sorry for you. But he's with a real woman now, someone who matches his level." Tamika zoomed in with her phone camera, making sure she got a good angle of Celeste's face. "This is going straight to the family group chat," she said gleefully. "Everyone needs to see this. Poor little Celeste, showing up where she doesn't belong." Lorraine stood up, walking over with her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. She looked Celeste up and down with pure disgust. "This is what happens when you marry above your station, girl. My son is meant for greatness. He needs a woman who can elevate him, not drag him down. You've never had anything, and you never will. You don't belong in places like this. Look at you. That cheap sundress, those bargain store sandals. You're an embarrassment." The words cut deeper than any knife could, not because they were true, but because this was her husband's mother, the woman who was supposed to love her like a daughter, publicly tearing her apart. Celeste felt tears starting to well up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. The front desk clerk cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Your reservation has been canceled, and we need to maintain the comfort of our other guests." The implication was clear. Celeste was making people uncomfortable. Her presence, her pain, her very existence in this luxury space was inappropriate. She was being treated like a criminal, like someone who had broken into a place she had no right to be. Before Celeste could respond, 2 security guards appeared from nowhere. "Ma'am, we need you to leave the premises. We'll help you with your luggage." They weren't rough, but they were firm, each taking one of her bags and gesturing toward the door. Celeste looked at Darnell one last time, searching his face for any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with, but there was nothing there. His eyes were cold, distant, like he was looking at a stranger, like 7 years of marriage meant absolutely nothing, like she meant absolutely nothing. "May I just sit in the lobby for one moment?" Celeste asked the security guard, her voice breaking slightly. She needed a minute, just 1 minute to collect herself, to breathe, to process what was happening. But the guard shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We need you to leave immediately." So they escorted her out, past the staring guests, past the smirking staff, past Darnell and his family, who were already back to celebrating like she'd never existed at all. They walked her right out to the curb, set her bags down on the hot pavement, and left her there, alone, humiliated, broken. Celeste sat on her suitcase, her hands shaking, tears finally streaming down her face. She clutched Mama Ruth's locket, the silver warm against her palm, and she could almost hear her grandmother's voice in her head. "Dignity isn't loud, baby. Real power moves in silence." But right now, Celeste didn't feel powerful. She felt destroyed. She felt like every ounce of love she'd given, every sacrifice she'd made, every moment of patience and forgiveness had been thrown back in her face like garbage. She didn't notice the black luxury car that pulled up behind her. She didn't see the man in the expensive suit step out, his face going pale when he recognized her. She didn't hear him whisper urgently into his phone, "Sir, she's here. Yes, at the main entrance. What do you want me to do?" She just sat there, alone with her pain, wondering how her life had come to this moment, wondering how the man she loved could be so cruel, wondering if she'd ever feel whole again. But to understand how Celeste ended up on that curb, broken and humiliated, we need to go back. Back to a small town in Georgia, back to a tiny house with a garden full of magnolias, back to a woman named Mama Ruth, who raised a little girl to believe in dignity, kindness, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing your own worth. 25 years ago, Celeste was just a child growing up in that small town, being raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was only 3 years old. Mama Ruth was a seamstress, her hands always moving, always creating, turning simple fabric into beautiful dresses for the women in their community. The house smelled like lavender and fresh bread, and every evening, Celeste would sit at Mama Ruth's feet, watching those skilled hands work magic with needle and thread. Mama Ruth taught Celeste everything: how to sew a straight seam, how to plant tomatoes, how to pray when life got hard. But most importantly, Mama Ruth taught her about dignity. "Baby girl," she would say, her voice soft and warm like honey. "The world is going to try to tell you who you are based on what you have, where you come from, what you look like. But you listen to me. Your worth isn't in any of that. Your worth is in your character, in how you treat people when they can't do anything for you, in how you stand tall when life tries to break you. Real power doesn't shout, it whispers, and the people who matter will always hear it." On Celeste's 16th birthday, Mama Ruth gave her a silver locket. It was simple, nothing fancy, but inside was a photo of Mama Ruth as a young woman, and engraved on the back were the words, "You are more than they see." Celeste wore that locket every single day. Through high school, where she was the quiet girl who got straight A's but never bragged. Through college, where she earned a full scholarship to business school and studied hospitality management while working 3 part-time jobs. Through every moment of loneliness, every moment of doubt, that locket reminded her of who she was. It was during her junior year of college that Celeste met Mr. Wallace Dumont. He was an elderly black man, a billionaire who had built Paradise International from nothing. He'd started with one small hotel in Atlanta and turned it into a global empire worth $88 billion. He had no children, no family, no one to leave his legacy to. He came to Celeste's business school to give a speech, and afterwards, he asked her a question that changed her life. "Young lady, what does luxury mean to you?" Most students would have talked about expensive things, about status symbols, about wealth. But Celeste looked at him with those honest eyes and said, "Luxury is making people feel like they matter, like they're seen, like they're home." Mr. Dumont smiled that day, a real smile that reached his eyes, and he said, "Come work for me." For the next 5 years, Celeste worked directly under Mr. Dumont, learning every aspect of the business. She wasn't just an employee. She was his protégé, his chosen successor, the daughter he never had. When Mr. Dumont got sick, when the doctors said he only had months left, he called Celeste to his bedside. "I'm leaving everything to you," he told her, his voice weak but determined. "Every hotel, every resort, every property, the entire empire, but I have one condition." Celeste had tears streaming down her face. "Anything, sir, anything." Mr. Dumont took her hand. "I want you to live anonymously for 10 years. Don't tell anyone who you are. Don't let them know about your wealth. I want you to see who really loves you, who values you for you, not for what you have. Because, Celeste, the loneliest thing in this world is being rich and never knowing if people love you or your money." So when Mr. Dumont passed away, Celeste became the chairman of Paradise International, but no one knew it was her. The board knew her only as Madame Chairman, communicating through video calls with her face obscured, making decisions through trusted proxies. She lived simply, modestly, in a regular apartment, driving a regular car, working at a community center as a volunteer. She honored Mr. Dumont's wish because she understood his wisdom. She wanted to find someone who would love her for her heart, not her bank account. That's where she met Darnell. 7 years ago, at that community center in Atlanta, she was teaching kids how to sew. carrying on Mama Ruth's legacy when Darnell walked in. He was handsome, charming, confident in a way that made him stand out in any room. He worked in middle management at a tech company, and he was there doing community service hours for some corporate initiative. They started talking, and Celeste found herself drawn to his smile, his ambition, his dreams of building something great. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen. He made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this was the love she'd been waiting for. They dated for 2 years before getting married, and during that time, Celeste never told him about her wealth. She paid for things quietly, pretending it was from savings or from her regular job. They had a simple wedding, just family and close friends. Nothing fancy, nothing extravagant. Darnell's family was there, Lorraine and Tamika, already looking at Celeste with barely concealed disdain, already making comments about how Darnell was marrying down, how Celeste was too quiet, too simple, too plain. But Darnell defended her back then. He told his mother, "I love her, that's all that matters." He told Celeste she was beautiful, that her quiet strength was what he loved most about her. He told her they were going to build a life together, that his success would be their success, that they were partners. And Celeste believed him. She believed in him. She believed in them. But somewhere along the way, things changed. Maybe it was the constant pressure from his mother. Maybe it was the way his career wasn't advancing as fast as he wanted. Maybe it was just who he really was underneath all that charm. After 5 years of marriage, Darnell started to grow bitter. He started comparing Celeste to other women, women who were louder, flashier, more successful in visible ways. He started coming home late, started making excuses, started treating her like she was a burden instead of his wife. That's when Bianca entered the picture. She was a marketing executive, all designer clothes and expensive perfume, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to struggle for anything. She and Darnell worked on a project together, and Celeste could see the change in him. The way his eyes lit up when Bianca's name came up. The way he started dressing better, acting differently, being distant. Celeste knew he was having an affair. She knew it in her bones, but she said nothing. She watched. She waited. She tested. Because Mr. Dumont's words echoed in her mind. See who really loves you. And what she saw broke her heart. Darnell didn't just have an affair, he flaunted it. He posted photos with Bianca on social media, taking her to expensive restaurants using the credit card that Celeste funded, but Darnell thought was his own money. He stayed out all night, coming home smelling like Bianca's perfume, not even bothering to hide it anymore. When Celeste asked him what was happening to their marriage, he looked at her with cold eyes and said, "You're too boring, Celeste. Bianca excites me. She has class. She has style. She matches my level. You're just basic." His mother and sister fed the fire. Lorraine would call Darnell constantly, telling him he deserved better, that Celeste was holding him back, that a man of his caliber needed a woman who could elevate him. Tamika started posting subtle jabs on social media, photos of Bianca with captions like, "This is what success looks like," and "Some women just have IT." The family had made their choice, and Celeste wasn't it. Then came the Maldives trip. Darnell announced one day that he was taking a second honeymoon, and Celeste's heart lifted for just a moment. Maybe this was it. Maybe he wanted to fix things. But then he added, "I'm taking Bianca. She deserves to experience luxury. You wouldn't appreciate it anyway." He canceled Celeste's reservation, used her credit card to upgrade Bianca to the honeymoon villa, and invited his mother and sister along to celebrate his new beginning. He didn't just betray Celeste. He humiliated her. He made it public. He made it deliberate. He made it cruel. And that's how Celeste ended up on that curb in the Maldives, her luggage beside her, tears streaming down her face, clutching Mama Ruth's locket like it was the only real thing left in the world. For 6 months, she'd endured the betrayal quietly, hoping something would change. But sitting there on that hot pavement, listening to Darnell and his family laughing inside the resort, she finally reached her breaking point. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed a number she'd never called before during business hours. "Preston," she said, her voice cracking. "It's me." Preston was her assistant, the man who managed her entire empire while she lived in the shadows. He was one of 3 people in the world who knew her true identity. "Madame Chairman," his voice came through immediately, concerned. "What's wrong?" "Preston, I'm ready. Book my flight back to Paradise Cove for the evening gala." And Preston, she took a deep breath, wiping the tears from her face. "It's time they know. It's time everyone knows." There was a pause on the other end, and then Preston's voice came back, steady and sure. "Yes, Madame Chairman. Shall I alert the resort owner?" Celeste thought about it for a moment, looking back at the resort entrance where she'd been thrown out like trash. "No, let me walk in as myself. Let them see what they've done." That night, Celeste sat in her hotel room at a different property, one that Darnell didn't know about, and she looked at herself in the mirror. She'd been living small for so long, hiding her power, diminishing herself, trying to be the kind of woman Darnell wanted. But as she looked at her reflection, she realized something. She was never going to be enough for him, because he didn't want a real woman. He wanted a trophy. He wanted someone he could show off, someone who would make him feel important. He didn't want love. He wanted status. Celeste opened her closet and pulled out the designer gown she'd kept hidden all these years, a stunning black number that cost more than most people's cars. She did her hair, styled it in elegant waves that framed her face. She put on makeup, not heavy, just enough to highlight her natural beauty, and she fastened Mama Ruth's locket around her neck, the only simple thing she wore, because she needed that reminder of where she came from, of who she really was underneath all the wealth and power. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw the transformation. She wasn't broken anymore. She was ready to show Darnell and his family exactly who they'd thrown away, ready to reclaim her dignity, ready to let the truth destroy everything they thought they knew. The Paradise Cove Evening Gala was the social event of the season. The resort's grand ballroom was decorated with crystal chandeliers and white orchids. A live band played smooth jazz, and the guest list read like a who's who of the world's elite. Darnell and Bianca were there, dressed in their finest, dancing and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Lorraine held court at a table, showing off her jewelry to anyone who would listen, while Tamika posted constant updates to social media, documenting every moment of their fabulous vacation. Darnell was in his element, bragging to other guests about his life, his success, his beautiful companion. "Yeah, my wife couldn't even afford to stay here," he told a group of businessmen, his arm around Bianca's waist. "I had to upgrade my reservation for someone who actually appreciates luxury. Sometimes you just have to cut the dead weight, you know?" The men laughed uncomfortably, not quite sure how to respond to someone openly mocking his own wife. But Darnell didn't notice. He was too busy celebrating what he thought was his victory. Then the ballroom doors opened and Celeste walked in. The room didn't go silent immediately. It was gradual, like a wave, starting with the people near the entrance and spreading outward as more and more guests noticed her presence. She moved through the crowd with a grace that commanded attention, her black gown flowing behind her, her head held high, her expression calm and controlled. She looked like royalty. She looked like power. She looked like everything Darnell had said she wasn't. Darnell saw her and his face twisted in confusion. "What the hell?" he muttered, releasing Bianca and starting toward Celeste. "What are you doing here?" I canceled your reservation. How did you even get in? But before he could reach her, before he could say anything else, there was a commotion at the staff entrance. Mr. Lewis, the resort owner, burst through the doors, his face pale and panicked, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He pushed through the crowd, not stopping, not slowing, until he stood directly in front of Celeste, and then in front of 200 of the world's wealthiest and most powerful people. Mr. Lewis dropped to his knees. The room went completely silent. Even the band stopped playing. Everyone stared, confused, shocked, unable to process what they were seeing. The owner of Paradise Cove Resort, a property worth billions, was kneeling before a woman who'd been thrown out like garbage just hours before. "Forgive me, Madam Chairman," Mr. Lewis said, his voice shaking with genuine fear and remorse. "I didn't know you'd arrive personally. Had I known, I would have. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Celeste looked down at him, her expression unreadable. "Stand up, Lewis," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the silent room. "You've done nothing wrong." Mr. Lewis stood trembling, his eyes wide. "But, Madame Chairman, your reservation was cancelled. Your belongings were removed. If I had known it was you—" He was speaking English, but the words didn't make sense to anyone listening. "Madam Chairman, what was he talking about?" Darnell pushed forward, his face red with anger and confusion. "What are you talking about? This is my wife. She's nobody. She's—" Celeste finally looked at Darnell, and in that moment he saw something in her eyes that made him stop mid-sentence. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pain. It was something far more terrifying. It was pity. She looked at him the way you'd look at a child who'd just broken something precious without understanding what they'd done. "Darnell," she said, her voice calm and measured, "meet Mr. Lewis. He runs this resort, for me, just like the 247 other properties worldwide." The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Lorraine stood up from her table, her face twisted in disbelief. "This is some kind of joke. She's lying. She's crazy. She's trying to—" But Celeste pulled out her phone, made one call, and said simply, "Preston, send the verification to Mr. Lewis, now." Within seconds, Mr. Lewis's tablet lit up, a notification chiming in the silent room. He turned the screen to face the crowd, his hands still shaking. On the screen was a corporate profile complete with photos, documents, and financial statements. Paradise International Holdings. Chairman, Celeste Marie Hayes. Net worth, $88.4 billion. Photos of Celeste in boardrooms, signing contracts, meeting with world leaders, sitting at the head of massive conference tables. Every photo was dated, authenticated, verified by multiple sources. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a trick. This was real. Someone in the crowd gasped, then another. Then the whispers started, spreading like wildfire through the ballroom. Tamika's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the marble floor. Bianca's face went from confident to horrified in the span of a heartbeat. And Darnell just stood there, frozen, his mouth hanging open, unable to process what he was seeing. The quiet, simple woman he'd mocked and betrayed, the woman he'd thrown away like garbage, was one of the richest and most powerful people in the world. Celeste stepped forward and the crowd parted for her like she was Moses at the Red Sea. She moved slowly, deliberately, letting every eye in the room follow her. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but everyone heard every single word. "7 years ago, I met a man I thought was kind, a man I thought had a good heart. I loved him with everything I had. I gave him my trust, my loyalty, my devotion, and I wanted to see if he would love me the same way, without my money, without my power, without anything but me." She stopped in front of Darnell, looking at him with those same sad, pitying eyes. "You failed that test, Darnell. Every single day, you failed it. Not because you didn't know I had money, but because you didn't value me when you thought I had nothing. That was the whole point, to find someone who would love me for me. And you showed me, over and over again, that you were never that person. She turned to Lorraine, who had sunk back into her chair, her face ashen. You called me beneath your sun. You said I wasn't good enough for your family, that I would never have anything, that I was an embarrassment. Celeste's voice remained calm, controlled, devastating in its quietness. Mrs. Hayes, your son works for Tech Drive Solutions, or rather he did. Tech Drive is a subsidiary of Paradise International. I've been keeping him employed out of mercy, but that mercy ends tonight. Lorraine's hand flew to her mouth. Tamika started to cry, actual tears streaming down her face as she realized the magnitude of what they'd done. But Celeste wasn't finished. She turned to Bianca, who was trying to inch toward the exit. And you thought you won a prize. You thought you took something valuable from me. That diamond bracelet on your wrist? Paid for with my credit card. The villa you've been staying in? My property. That designer dress you're wearing. From Maison Celeste, my fashion line. Even the perfume you're wearing. Paradise Luxury, one of my brands. Bianca tore the bracelet off like it was burning her skin, letting it fall to the floor with a clatter. Her face was no longer smug. She looked terrified, humiliated, desperate to disappear. Darnell finally found his voice. Celeste, I didn't know. If I had known... But Celeste cut him off, her voice sharp for the first time. That's exactly the problem, Darnell. You should have loved me when you thought I had nothing. You should have defended me when your mother called me worthless. You should have been faithful when you thought I was just a simple woman with a simple job. But you didn't. You betrayed me. You humiliated me. You threw me away. And now you want forgiveness because you found out I'm rich? She reached up and removed her wedding ring, the simple gold band she'd worn for 7 years. She placed it on the table beside them, the small piece of metal making a soft clink against the wood. I'm done, Darnell. I'm done being small for you. I'm done hiding who I am. I'm done letting you and your family treat me like I'm nothing. She turned to Mr. Lewis, her voice returning to that calm, controlled tone. Cancel all charges to my credit card associated with Mr. Hayes, effective immediately. Mr. Lewis nodded rapidly, already pulling out his phone to make it happen. Celeste looked at the security team that had gathered near the entrance. Mr. Hayes and his guests are no longer welcome at any Paradise International property. Worldwide ban. Please escort them out. The head of security nodded, and within seconds, a team of 6 guards surrounded Darnell, Bianca, Lorraine, and Tamika. This way, please, the head guard said firmly but professionally. Darnell tried to protest. You can't do this. This is insane. Celeste, please, we can talk about this. We can... But the guards were already moving them toward the exit. Bianca was crying now, mascara running down her face. Lorraine was shouting about lawyers and lawsuits, but no one was listening. Tamika tried to grab her phone to record, but a guard gently took it from her hand. The last thing Darnell saw before the ballroom doors closed was Celeste, standing in the center of that magnificent room, surrounded by the world's elite, looking like the queen she'd always been, but had hidden for so long. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Darnell, Bianca, and his family were escorted to the lobby where their luggage had been brought down. When Darnell tried to pay for a flight home with his credit card, it was declined. He tried another, declined. He tried a third, declined. Every single card was connected to accounts that Celeste had funded, accounts he'd thought were his own money. He was standing there in the lobby of one of the most expensive resorts in the world, unable to pay for anything, realizing for the first time that everything he thought he had was actually hers. His phone rang. It was his boss at Tech Drive. "Darnell, we need to talk. The company is restructuring and your position has been eliminated, effective immediately." Darnell felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "What? Why? I've been with the company for 8 years. His boss sighed. "The decision came from corporate, from the parent company. I'm sorry, Darnell. There's nothing I can do." Darnell hung up and looked at his phone, hands shaking. He pulled up Paradise International's corporate structure on Google, something he'd never bothered to look at before. And there it was, TechDrive Solutions listed as a subsidiary of Paradise International. Celeste had owned the company he worked for. She'd been his boss this entire time, several levels removed, but still his boss. She'd been the reason he had a job, a salary, a career, and he'd never known. Bianca was already on her phone, crying as she called someone else. "Marcus, hi, it's Bianca. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'm in a situation. I need you to wire me money for a flight. Please, I'll explain everything later. I just need to get out of here." She hung up and looked at Darnell with pure hatred in her eyes. "You told me you were successful. You told me you had money. You said you could give me the life I deserved. But you're nothing. You're broke. You're pathetic. I wasted a year of my life on you." "Bianca, wait!" Darnell reached for her, but she jerked away. "Don't touch me. Don't ever call me again. Don't text me. Don't even think about me. We're done. We were always nothing." She grabbed her designer luggage and walked out of the lobby, heels clicking against the marble, leaving Darnell standing there alone with his mother and sister, all three of them facing the reality of what they'd done. Lorraine and Tamika fared no better. Within days, they discovered they'd been banned from every luxury resort chain worldwide, not just Paradise International. Word had spread fast in the elite circles about what had happened, and no one wanted to be associated with the family that had publicly humiliated and betrayed one of the world's most powerful women. Lorraine's country club membership was revoked when it was discovered that the club was on property owned by a Paradise International subsidiary. Tamika lost her influencer sponsorships as brands rushed to distance themselves from someone who'd shown such cruelty and poor judgment. The video of their humiliation at the gala had somehow leaked, going viral across social media. Millions of people watched as Darnell and his family were exposed and escorted out. The comments were brutal. "Imagine throwing away a billionaire because you thought she was too simple. This is what happens when you judge a book by its cover. She gave him everything and he gave her nothing but disrespect. He got exactly what he deserved." Darnell tried to call Celeste 47 times over the next week. Every call went to voicemail. He tried to show up at her corporate office, but security removed him before he even made it past the lobby. He wrote her a letter, pages and pages of apologies and explanations and begging. "I'm sorry. I was blind. I was stupid. I was influenced by my family. Please give me another chance. Please let me prove I can change. I love you. I've always loved you." The letter came back 3 days later, unopened, with a note from Celeste's assistant Preston. "Madam Chairman has moved forward. Do not contact her again." Those words were the final nail in the coffin of Darnell's old life. He'd lost his wife, his job, his reputation, his dignity. His family blamed him for their downfall, cutting him off completely. Bianca had moved on, posting photos with a new man, a real millionaire this time. Darnell was left with nothing but the wreckage of his own choices, alone in an apartment he could no longer afford, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. 3 months later, Celeste returned to Georgia, to the small town where she'd grown up with Mama Ruth. She'd bought her grandmother's old house and renovated it, not into a mansion, but into something beautiful and functional. She'd turned it into a community center, a place where local women could learn skills, where children could get tutoring, where the neighborhood could gather and grow. She kept it simple, warm, welcoming, just like Mama Ruth would have wanted. Celeste spent her days there, teaching young girls how to sew, just like Mama Ruth had taught her. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back, Mama Ruth's locket always around her neck. She still ran Paradise International, still made billion-dollar decisions, but she did it from that front porch, sitting in a rocking chair with her laptop. The smell of magnolias in the air, the sounds of children playing in the yard. One afternoon, a young woman approached her, maybe 19 or 20, with curious eyes. "Miss Celeste, everyone in town is talking about you. They're saying you're a billionaire, that you own half the world. Is it true?" Celeste smiled softly, the kind of smile that held wisdom and peace. "Money doesn't define you, baby. Character does. You can have all the wealth in the world and still be poor in the ways that matter, or you can have nothing and be richer than kings." She opened her locket, showing the young woman the photo of Mama Ruth. "My grandmother taught me that real power isn't in what you own. It's in who you are when no one's watching. It's in how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It's in standing tall when the world tries to break you." The young woman looked at the photo, then back at Celeste. "What happened with your husband? Everyone's talking about that video, about how he treated you." Celeste closed the locket gently, her fingers tracing the engraved words, "You are more than they see." "He taught me a valuable lesson. He showed me that some people will only value you if they think you can give them something. But real love, true love, values you just because you exist. I spent 7 years trying to be enough for him, and I finally realized that I was always enough. He just wasn't capable of seeing it." She rocked gently in the chair, looking out at the yard where children were playing. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm at peace because I know who I am, and that's something no one can ever take from me." A notification chimed on her laptop. A message from Preston about a new resort opening in Dubai, a deal worth $3 billion. Celeste approved it with a quick email, then closed her laptop and stood up. "Come on," she said to the young woman. "Let me teach you how to make a quilt. It's something my grandmother taught me. Every piece of fabric tells a story, and when you put them all together, you create something beautiful out of the broken pieces." They went inside, and Celeste pulled out boxes of fabric, the same boxes Mama Ruth had used decades ago. She felt her grandmother's presence in that moment, felt her approval, felt her love. This was where she was meant to be, not in boardrooms or galas or luxury resorts. Right here, in this simple house, doing simple work, being exactly who she was always meant to be. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful, and sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's simply walking away and letting them live with what they've lost. Celeste had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. She'd given her love to someone who didn't value it. She didn't destroy them, they destroyed themselves. And Celeste? She found peace. She found herself. She found the quiet strength that Mama Ruth had always told her was there, waiting, patient, ready to carry her through any storm. As the sun set over that small Georgia town, Celeste sat on the porch with her locket in her hand, and she whispered to the wind, to Mama Ruth's memory, to the universe itself. "Thank you, Mama. You were right. I was always more than they could see."